Hello, I am Mike.
Hello, I am Lily. Welcome to English Podcast Flow.
Today we're tackling a challenge that so many English learners face,
Yeah.
that feeling of understanding English perfectly, but struggling to recall the right words when it's time to speak.
It's so frustrating.
Yeah, you know that feeling, right? When you're in a conversation, everything's clicking, you're following along, and then bam, your turn to speak arrives and your mind goes blank.
Ugh, it's the worst.
The words you need, the ones you know you've learned, they just disappear like smoke, leaving you feeling tongue-tied and a bit embarrassed.
Yeah, you're like frozen.
Exactly. And in this podcast, we're going to explore this phenomenon, diving into the reasons why we forget words when speaking English, and more importantly, share some practical tips and techniques to help you overcome this hurdle and speak with greater confidence and fluency.
I'm excited.
Me too.
Yeah.
So first things first, let's try to understand why this happens, why even when we feel like we know the words, they sometimes evade us in the heat of the moment. What do you think?
Well, it appears that several factors contribute to this common experience. One key element is simply the speed at which our brains need to operate when speaking a foreign language.
Makes sense.
Think about it, when you're speaking your native language, the words flow effortlessly, almost without conscious thought. But when you're speaking English, your brain has to work much harder, juggling grammar rules, vocabulary retrieval, and pronunciation all at the same time.
Right. It's like multitasking on overdrive.
Exactly. It's like trying to juggle 5 balls at once when you're only used to juggling 3. It takes time and practice to develop that coordination and agility.
That's a great analogy. It makes a lot of sense. So it's not that we don't know the words, it's that our brains sometimes need a little extra time to catch up and access them in real time.
Right, and then you add in the nerves.
But I imagine nervousness and stress also play a role, right?
Absolutely. Studies show that when we're anxious or feeling pressured, our bodies release stress hormones that can interfere with cognitive functions, including memory and word recall. Think about a time when you've had to give a presentation or speak in public.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Your heart might be racing, your palms sweating, and your mind might feel like it's gone blank. It's the same principle at play when we're trying to speak English in a high-pressure situation.
That's so relatable. I know I've definitely experienced those moments of stage fright, even when I'm speaking in my native language.
Happens to the best of us.
So brain speed and nervousness, those are two big culprits. But I have a feeling there's another factor at play here. What about simply not using the words we learn frequently enough?
You're absolutely right. The use it or lose it principle definitely applies to language learning. If we only passively study vocabulary lists or grammar rules without actively using them in conversation or writing those words, and structures are much more likely to fade from memory.
Oh, that's so true.
It's like learning to play a musical instrument but never actually practicing. You might know the theory, but your fingers won't know what to do when you sit down at the piano.
Perfect analogy.
Mm.
Okay, so we've identified 3 major reasons why we sometimes forget words when speaking English: brain speed, nervousness, and lack of active use. Now let's move on to the more exciting part, the solutions. Let's explore some practical strategies and techniques that can help us overcome these obstacles and speak English with greater confidence and fluency. Where should we start?
Well, one common mistake that many English learners make is relying too heavily on rote memorization.
Yeah, just memorizing lists and lists of words.
Cramming word lists or memorizing grammar rules in isolation might seem like an efficient way to learn, but it appears that our brains are much better at retaining information when it's presented in a meaningful context. Think about it. You're more likely to remember a funny anecdote that someone told you than a random list of facts or figures.
Oh, definitely. Stories are so powerful.
Right.
So instead of just trying to memorize the word appointment, for example, we should try to use it in a sentence like, I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow afternoon.
Thanks, sir.
And maybe even create a little story around it, like, I need to reschedule my doctor's appointment because I accidentally double booked myself with a lunch date with a friend. Adding that extra layer of context and personal relevance seems like it would make the word more memorable.
Exactly. And the more connections you create between a word and its usage, the stronger that memory imprint will become.
Now, speaking of making connections, one technique that I found incredibly helpful for remembering new vocabulary is spaced repetition. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Of course, spaced repetition is a learning technique that leverages the way our brains naturally forget information over time. Essentially, it involves reviewing material at increasing intervals, starting with short intervals and gradually extending them as the information becomes more ingrained in our memory.
So, for example, if I learn a new word today, I might review it again tomorrow, then again in 3 days, then a week later, and so on. This way, I'm consistently reminding my brain of the word and strengthening those neural connections.
Exactly. Studies show that spaced repetition is a highly effective way to move information from our short-term memory to our long-term memory, making it much less likely to disappear when we need it.
That's fantastic. I've definitely noticed that when I use spaced repetition to review vocabulary, the words stick with me much longer. It's like giving my brain a little nudge to remember them.
Yeah.
Now, for those particularly tricky words, those ones that just seem to slip our minds, no matter how hard we try to remember them, what other strategies can we use?
Well, one powerful technique is to harness the power of visual memory. Studies show that we often remember images more easily than words. So associating a word with a vivid picture can be a great way to make it stick.
Interesting. So, for example, if I'm trying to remember the word umbrella, I might imagine myself using a bright yellow umbrella to shield myself from a sudden downpour. And maybe even add some sensory detail to the image, like the sound of the rain drumming on the umbrella or the feeling of the cool water droplets on my skin. The more vivid and multi-sensory the image, the more memorable it will be.
Exactly. You can also try incorporating the word into a short story or a funny scenario. For example, if the word is butterfly, you might imagine a giant butterfly landing on your head and whisking you away on a magical adventure. The key is to make it personal, engaging, and a little bit outlandish to really solidify that memory imprint.
I love that. These visual and narrative techniques sound so much more fun and effective than just staring at flashcards or repeating words over and over again. But at the end of the day, I think the most crucial ingredient for any language learning is consistent practice, right?
Absolutely. You can have the biggest vocabulary in the world, but if you don't regularly use those words in spoken conversation, they'll remain locked away in your mental vault.
So true. So what are some ways to squeeze in more speaking practice, even if we don't have English-speaking buddies readily available?
Well, one surprisingly effective technique is simply to talk to yourself. It might seem a bit silly at first, but describing your actions and surroundings aloud can be a great way to practice thinking and speaking in English. For example, as you're getting ready in the morning, you might say things like, I'm brushing my teeth, I'm putting on my shirt, I'm making coffee.
I like that.
Yeah,
It might feel strange at first, but it's a great way to get your brain into the habit of using English actively.
for sure.
And I imagine it's also a good way to practice pronunciation and intonation in a safe and private environment.
Exactly. And if you can find a language partner either online or in person, that's even better. Regular conversations, even short ones, can do wonders for your fluency and word recall.
And if you're feeling really adventurous, there are often English-speaking clubs or groups in many cities which offer a great opportunity to meet new people and practice your English skills in a social setting.
The key is to find opportunities to use the language actively and consistently. The more you do, the more those words will become ingrained in your memory, ready to be accessed when you need them.
We've all been there mid-conversation, and suddenly your mind goes blank. You know the word you want to say, it's on the tip of your tongue, but it just won't come out.
Oh, yeah, I hate that feeling.
What should we do in those moments to avoid awkward silences or giving up entirely?
First and foremost, don't panic. Everyone, even native speakers, experiences these tip-of-the-tongue moments from time to time.
Oh, that makes me feel better.
It's a normal part of language processing, and it doesn't mean you're not making progress.
That's reassuring to hear.
Yeah.
So instead of getting flustered or giving up, what strategies can we use to keep the conversation flowing?
Well, one simple but effective technique is to use a simpler word instead. If you can't remember the word expensive, for example, you could say it costs a lot of money. Or instead of delicious, you could say it tastes really good. It might not be the most elegant solution, but it gets the message across and keeps the conversation moving.
That's a great tip. It's all about finding ways to communicate effectively, even when our vocabulary fails us. Are there other strategies we can use in these moments of word loss?
Absolutely. You can also try describing the word you're looking for. So instead of saying fridge, you could say, it's that cold box in the kitchen where we keep the food. It might sound a bit roundabout, but it gets the point across.
Oh, that's clever. And sometimes little creativity can go a long way in these situations.
And don't underestimate the power of nonverbal communication. Hand gestures, facial expressions, even drawing a quick picture in the air can help you convey your meaning when words fail you.
It's all about using all the tools at our disposal to get our message across. Speaking of expanding our vocabulary, it appears that learning synonyms can be a game changer.
Absolutely. Expanding your repertoire of words with similar meanings not only makes your English sound more sophisticated and nuanced, but also helps you avoid getting stuck using the same words repeatedly.
It's like having a backup generator for your language. If
Yeah.
one word isn't working, you've got another one ready to go.
Yeah.
Can you give us some examples of useful synonyms?
Of course. Instead of always relying on happy, you could use glad, joyful, or cheerful, depending on the specific shade of meaning you want to convey. Instead of big, you might choose large, huge, or massive to emphasize the scale. And instead of fast, you could use quick, speedy, or rapid to add variety and precision to your descriptions.
I love how synonyms add nuance and color to our language. It's like having a whole palette of words to paint with instead of just one basic brush. Now let's talk about another strategy that can boost our fluency and make our spoken English sound more natural learning phrases instead of just individual words.
That's a fantastic point. Think about it. We don't speak in isolated words, but rather in chunks of language or phrases. Learning these ready-made units can significantly speed up your speaking and make you sound more like a native speaker.
It's like having pre-assembled building blocks for your sentences. Instead of fumbling around for each individual brick, you can grab a whole section and slot it right in.
Precisely. For example, instead of just knowing the words I don't understand and repeat, you could learn the phrase, I don't understand. Can you repeat that? This instantly becomes a tool you can use in any situation where you need clarification.
That's so much more efficient than trying to piece together the individual words in the heat of the moment. What are some other examples of useful phrases we should be adding to our repertoire?
Well, can you help me, please? Is a universal phrase that can come in handy in countless situations. Or how about, I think it's a good idea for expressing agreement or offering a suggestion. The possibilities are endless.
The more phrases we internalize, the smoother and more effortless our spoken English will become. It's like having a secret weapon for fluency. Now let's move on to another tool that can be incredibly helpful for self-improvement, recording ourselves speaking.
It might feel a bit awkward at first, but hearing your own voice can provide invaluable insights into your strengths and areas for improvement. It's like having a personal language coach in your pocket.
It's true. Sometimes we're so focused on what we're trying to say that we don't even realize how we sound. Recording ourselves allows us to step back and listen objectively.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. You can simply use the voice memo app on your phone or a free online recording tool. Try picking a topic like what I did today or my favorite hobby and speak for a minute or two without stopping. Then listen back to the recording and pay attention to your pronunciation fluency and any grammatical errors you might notice.
It's like watching a replay of yourself playing a sport. You can see where you excel and where you need to improve.
Precisely. And with each recording, you can focus on making small incremental improvements, whether it's enunciating more clearly, slowing down your pace, or using more varied vocabulary.
It's a fantastic way to track your progress and celebrate how far you've come. Now, before we wrap up this part of our podcast, I think it's crucial to emphasize that forgetting words is completely normal, even for experienced English speakers.
Absolutely. It's part of the learning process, and it doesn't mean you're not making progress. In fact, it often means your brain is working hard to process and integrate new information.
It's like learning to ride a bike. You're bound to fall a few times before you find your balance. The key is to get back on and keep practicing.
Exactly. And remember, mistakes are valuable learning opportunities. Embrace them, analyze them, and use them to grow your skills.
So to all our listeners out there who are feeling discouraged because they sometimes forget words, remember this, you're not alone. It's a common challenge that everyone faces at some point in their language learning journey.
And the most important thing is to maintain a positive attitude. Keep practicing consistently and celebrate your successes along the way. The more you use the language, the more confident and fluent you'll become.
We've covered a lot of ground in this first part, from understanding the reasons behind word loss to exploring various techniques for improving memory and speaking skills.
And remember, the key is to find what works best for you. Experiment with different strategies, be patient with yourself, and most importantly, enjoy the process of learning and growing your English fluency.
We're thrilled to have you back for part 2 of our exploration into the fascinating world of forgetting words when you're trying to speak English.
Yeah, it can be so tricky.
As we discussed earlier, it's a common experience for language learners, and it can be incredibly frustrating when you feel like you understand everything perfectly, yet the words just won't come out when you need them.
Totally. It's like having a treasure chest full of knowledge, but you can't seem to find the key to unlock it.
Exactly. But as we also discussed, There are many strategies and techniques we can use to overcome this obstacle and unlock our full potential as English speakers.
Right, we have so many great tips to share.
I'm excited to learn more. Where should we start?
Well, one important principle to keep in mind is that language learning is most effective when it's engaging and enjoyable.
Right, it shouldn't feel like a chore.
Yeah, exactly. If we're dreading our study sessions or feeling overwhelmed by dry textbooks and vocabulary lists, it's no wonder those words don't stick around for long.
It's like trying to force yourself to eat a plate of broccoli when all you really want is a slice of chocolate cake.
Perfect analogy. So how can we inject more fun and excitement into our vocabulary learning?
Yeah, I'm all for making learning more enjoyable.
Well, one great approach is to think about your interests and hobbies. Are you a movie buff, a music lover, a passionate cook? There are endless opportunities to incorporate English learning into activities you already enjoy.
I love that idea. So if I'm a film fanatic, I could watch movies or TV shows in English with subtitles, paying attention to new words and phrases I come across.
Exactly. And don't just passively watch, make it interactive. Pause the movie when you hear an interesting word or phrase. Write it down, look it up in a dictionary, and try using it in your own sentence. This way, you're actively engaging with the language and making it more meaningful to you.
And if I'm a music lover, I could listen to English songs focusing on the lyrics, maybe even singing along.
Hmm.
That's always a fun way to practice pronunciation and intonation, and it's a great way to learn new vocabulary in a context that's emotionally engaging.
Absolutely. You can find lyrics online, translate them if needed, and even create your own playlists of songs that feature vocabulary you want to learn. And the beauty of music is that it's often repetitive, so you'll hear those words and phrases over and over again, which can help solidify them in your memory.
And for our foodie friends out there, cooking shows and recipe websites in English can be a fantastic resource. Plus, you get to eat delicious food as a reward for your efforts.
It's a win-win. The key is to find ways to make English learning an integral part of your daily life rather than a separate chore to be dreaded.
It appears that the more we can weave English into activities we genuinely enjoy, the more naturally and effortlessly those words will seep into our brains.
Precisely. And don't be afraid to get creative. Start an English language book club with friends, write a blog or journal in English, even play word games or puzzles in English. The possibilities are endless.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of context repetition, visual associations, active practice, and making learning fun. But there's one more crucial piece of the puzzle that we haven't touched on yet: mindset.
Ah, yes. The power of mindset is often underestimated, but it can make all the difference in our language learning journey.
So what kind of mindset is most conducive to success in this area?
Well, first and foremost, it's important to cultivate a growth mindset, which is the belief that our abilities are not fixed, but rather can be developed through effort and learning.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
If we believe we're inherently bad at languages or that we'll never be able to speak fluently, that belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. But if we embrace the idea that we can constantly improve, that we can learn from our mistakes, and that fluency is a journey, not a destination, we open ourselves up to a world of possibilities.
So instead of getting discouraged when we forget a word or make a grammatical error, we can view it as a stepping stone on our path to mastery.
Precisely. Each mistake is an opportunity to learn and grow. And each time we successfully use a new word or phrase, it's a victory to be celebrated.
It appears that embracing this growth mindset can transform our entire approach to language learning. Instead of fearing failure, we can embrace challenges as opportunities for growth.
Exactly. And along with a growth mindset, it's important to cultivate patience and self-compassion. Learning a language takes time and effort, and it's natural to experience setbacks along the way.
It's like learning to play a musical instrument or mastering a new sport. It requires dedication, perseverance, and a willingness to embrace the ups and downs of the learning curve.
So be kind to yourself. Celebrate your progress, and don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. There are countless resources available, from teachers and tutors to online communities and language exchange partners.
And remember, every step forward, no matter how small, is a step in the right direction. The journey of language learning is a marathon, not a sprint.
And the rewards of that journey are immeasurable. Fluency in another language opens up a world of opportunities, from connecting with people from different cultures to expanding your career horizons and enriching your personal life.
So embrace the challenge, stay curious, and never stop exploring the wonderful world of language.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about some specific techniques that can help us improve our word recall and fluency in spoken English. One strategy that's often overlooked is the power of shadowing.
Shadowing, is that like mimicking someone's movements but with words?
Precisely. It involves listening to a recording of a native English speaker and repeating what they say as closely as possible, mimicking their pronunciation, intonation, and even their rhythm and pace.
It sounds a bit like karaoke for language learning.
In a way, yes. It's a fantastic way to train your ear, improve your pronunciation, and get a feel for the natural flow of spoken English.
So how do we actually go about shadowing effectively? Do we just pick any random recording and start repeating?
Well, it's best to start with short, clear recordings that are at your level of comprehension. You can find plenty of resources online, from podcasts and audiobooks to YouTube videos and language learning apps.
And I imagine it's helpful to choose topics that we find interesting or engaging so we're more motivated to pay attention.
Absolutely. The more you enjoy the material, the more likely you are to stick with it and reap the benefits.
So once we've chosen a recording, what's the best way to approach the shadowing process?
We'll start by listening to the recording once or twice without repeating, just to get a feel for the content and the speaker's style. Then try listening and repeating sentence by sentence, focusing on mimicking the speaker's pronunciation as accurately as possible.
And I imagine it's helpful to record ourselves while we're shadowing so we can listen back and compare our pronunciation to the original recording.
That's an excellent suggestion. It allows you to identify areas where you need to improve and track your progress over time.
It appears that shadowing can be a really powerful tool for developing fluency and confidence in spoken English.
Absolutely. It's like having a personal pronunciation coach right in your ear, guiding you towards more natural and authentic sounding English.
Now let's talk about another technique that can help us bridge the gap between knowing words and using them fluently, creating our own personalized vocabulary banks.
Ah, yes. Building a vocabulary bank is like creating a treasure chest of words and phrases that you can draw on whenever you need them.
So instead of just passively learning words from textbooks or vocabulary lists, we're actively curating our own collection of language gems.
Exactly. And the beauty of a personalized vocabulary bank is that it can be tailored to your specific interests, needs, and learning style.
So if I'm a foodie, my vocabulary bank might be filled with words and phrases related to cooking restaurants and different cuisines.
Precisely. And if you're a business professional, your vocabulary bank might focus on terms related to your industry, marketing, finance, or whatever your specific area expertise might be.
It appears that the key is to choose words and phrases that are relevant to our lives and interests, so they're more likely to stick in our mind and be readily accessible when we need them.
Absolutely. And don't limit yourself to just individual words. Include phrases, idioms, even whole sentences that you find useful or inspiring.
So how do we go about actually creating and organizing our vocabulary banks? Are we talking about physical notebooks, digital spreadsheets, or something else entirely?
Well, the format is entirely up to you. Some people prefer the tactile experience of writing words down in a notebook, while others find digital tools like flashcards or language learning apps more convenient.
I can see the appeal of both. A physical notebook feels more personal and tangible, while digital tools offer features like audio pronunciation and spaced repetition reminders.
Exactly. The key is to choose a method that works best for you and that you're likely to stick with consistently.
And I imagine it's helpful to review our vocabulary banks regularly, not just create them and forget about them.
Absolutely. Regular review is crucial for keeping those words and phrases fresh in our minds and for integrating them into our active vocabulary.
So we might set aside a few minutes each day to go over our vocabulary banks. Maybe even try using some of the words and phrases in sentences or conversations.
Precisely. And don't be afraid to add new words and phrases as you encounter them in your daily life, whether it's from reading, listening, or interacting with others.
That's like a living, breathing collection of language that's constantly evolving and growing along with us.
Exactly. Building a vocabulary bank is an ongoing process, and the more effort we put into it, the more rewarding it will be in the long run.
Now let's move on to another powerful technique for improving our fluency and word recall, engaging in regular conversations with native English speakers.
Ah, yes. There's simply no substitute for real-life practice when it comes to mastering a language.
It's like learning to swim. You can read all the books and watch all the videos you want, but until you jump in the water and start paddling, you won't truly develop those swimming skills.
Precisely. And the same goes for speaking English. The more we engage in conversations with native speakers, the more comfortable and confident we'll become in expressing ourselves.
So how can we find opportunities for these conversations, especially if we don't live in an English-speaking country or have many English-speaking friends?
Well, in today's interconnected world, there are more options than ever before. Online language exchange platforms, language cafes, Even social media groups dedicated to language learning can provide valuable opportunities to connect with native speakers.
And I imagine that even short, casual conversations can be beneficial, whether it's chatting with a barista at a coffee shop, asking for directions from a passerby, or striking up a conversation with a fellow passenger on public transportation.
Absolutely. Every interaction, no matter how brief, is a chance to practice your speaking skills, experiment with new vocabulary, and gain confidence in using the language in real-life situations.
And I think it's important to remember that native speakers are generally quite patient and understanding with language learners. They appreciate our efforts and are often happy to help us improve.
Absolutely. Most people are flattered when someone takes the time to learn their language, and they're usually more than willing to offer guidance and encouragement.
So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Embrace the opportunity to practice and enjoy the connections you make along the way.
Now let's talk about another strategy that can be incredibly helpful for boosting our confidence and fluency, preparing for specific speaking situations.
That makes sense. If we know what we're likely to talk about, we can mentally rehearse the vocabulary and phrases we might need, reducing the chances of those dreaded brain farts.
Exactly. Think about it. If you're going to a job interview, you wouldn't just wing it right. You'd research the company, prepare answers to common interview questions, maybe even practice your responses in front of a mirror.
So we can apply the same principle to everyday conversations as well. If we know we're going to a party, we can brainstorm some icebreaker questions or conversational topics ahead of time. Or if we're meeting a friend for coffee, we can think about some things we want to tell them or ask them.
Precisely. It's all about anticipating the situation and mentally preparing ourselves with the language we might need.
It appears that this kind of preparation can significantly reduce anxiety and boost our confidence in speaking situations, making us less likely to stumble over words or feel flustered.
Absolutely. And the more we practice the strategy, the more natural and effortless it will become.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the role of feedback in our language learning journey. While practice is essential, it's equally important to receive constructive criticism and guidance on areas where we can improve.
That's a crucial point. Think about any skill you've ever developed, whether it's playing a musical instrument, mastering a sport, or even learning to cook. Feedback from a coach, teacher, or mentor can be invaluable in identifying our strengths and weaknesses and guiding us towards improvement.
So how can we effectively seek out and receive feedback on our spoken English?
Well, first and foremost, it's important to choose feedback providers who are knowledgeable, experienced, and supportive. This could be a language teacher, a tutor, a language exchange partner, or even a trusted friend who is fluent in English.
And I imagine it's helpful to be specific about the kind of feedback we're looking for. Do we want feedback on our pronunciation, our grammar, our fluency, or all of the above?
Exactly. The more specific we are with our requests, the more targeted and helpful the feedback will be.
It appears that being receptive to feedback, even if it's not always positive, is crucial for growth and improvement. We need to view it as an opportunity to learn and refine our skills, not as a personal criticism.
Absolutely. And remember, feedback is most effective when it's delivered in a constructive and encouraging way. If the feedback provider is overly critical or focuses solely on our mistakes, it can be demotivating and counterproductive.
So it's important to find feedback providers who are both knowledgeable and supportive, who can balance honest critiques with positive reinforcement.
Precisely. And remember, feedback is a two-way street. Don't hesitate to ask clarifying questions, express your goals and concerns, and share your perspective on the feedback you receive.
It's a collaborative process, and the more open and honest we are with each other, the more beneficial it will be for our language learning journey.
It can be so frustrating when you feel like you're making progress, but then those words just vanish when you need them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? What other aspects of spoken English can we explore to help our listeners become more confident and fluent communicators?
Well, one area that often trips up even experienced English learners is the realm of self-assessment.
Self-assessment, you mean like evaluating our own speaking skills and identifying areas where we need to improve?
Precisely. While external feedback is valuable, it's equally important to develop the ability to critically analyze our own performance.
That makes perfect sense. If we can pinpoint our strengths and weaknesses, we can target our efforts more effectively and become more independent learners.
Right. It's all about taking ownership of your learning.
Exactly. Self-assessment involves honestly reflecting on our speaking habits, identifying areas where we excel and areas where we might need a little extra practice.
Like maybe we're really good at grammar, but our pronunciation needs some work.
So we might ask ourselves questions like, How clearly am I pronouncing words? Am I using a variety of vocabulary and grammatical structures? Am I speaking fluently and confidently?
Exactly. And you can use recordings of yourself speaking to gain a more objective perspective.
It's like watching a game film of ourselves playing a sport. We can see those subtle mistakes or areas where we could improve our technique.
It's a great way to see yourself from a different angle.
It appears that developing this self-awareness is crucial for becoming more effective learners and for taking charge of our language development.
Absolutely. The more we understand our own strengths and weaknesses, the better equipped we'll be to tailor our practice and seek out resources that address our specific needs.
Now let's delve into some specific strategies for overcoming those frustrating moments
Mhm.
when we know the word we want to say, but just can't seem to retrieve it from our mental lexicon.
Yes, those dreaded tip-of-the-tongue moments. I hate those.
It's like having a word stuck on the loading screen of our brains while the rest of our thoughts are racing ahead.
You said it. So, what can we do in those moments to avoid those awkward silences
Yeah, it's so uncomfortable.
or feeling completely tongue-tied?
Well, we've already talked about some strategies like using simpler words or describing the word we're looking for. But are there other techniques that can help us jog our memory and retrieve that elusive word?
Well, one strategy that can be helpful is to try to access the word from different angles.
Okay, like what?
Think about its sound, its meaning, its context, any associations you have with it.
So if I'm trying to remember the word umbrella, I might think about the sound of the rain, the feeling of holding an umbrella, or the image of a person shielding themselves from a downpour.
Exactly. The more connections you can make, the more likely you are to activate that neural pathway and retrieve the word.
It appears that activating those different sensory pathways can be like throwing multiple fishing lines into the sea of our memory, increasing our chances of catching that elusive word.
Uh-huh. I love that analogy. And sometimes simply taking a deep breath, relaxing, and allowing your mind to wander for a moment can do the trick.
Just let it come to you.
Exactly. Often when we stop trying so hard, the word will pop into our heads unexpectedly.
It's like when you're trying to remember where you put your keys, and the harder you search, the more elusive they become. But then when you finally give up and relax, they magically appear right in front of you.
Haha. Yes. Exactly. Sometimes our brains just need a moment to process and retrieve information, and putting too much pressure on ourselves can actually hinder the process.
So the next time we're struggling to recall a word, instead of panicking or berating ourselves, we can try to approach the situation with a sense of curiosity and playfulness.
Be kind to yourself.
We can explore different avenues of retrieval, relax our minds, and trust that our brains will eventually come up with the goods.
It'll come to you.
And even if we don't immediately recall the word, we can always use those other strategies we discussed, like paraphrasing, using synonyms, or simply asking for help.
Right. There's no shame in asking for help.
It's all about finding ways to communicate effectively, even when facing a momentary vocabulary lapse. And remember, even native speakers experience these tip-of-the-tongue moments, so there's no shame in it.
It happens to all of us.
It's a normal part of language processing, and it doesn't diminish our fluency or our language skills. Now let's talk about another challenge that many English learners face dealing with different accents and dialects.
Oh, yeah. Accents can be tricky.
The diversity of English accents and dialects is both a beautiful and challenging aspect of the language. It can enrich our understanding and appreciation of the language, but it can also create confusion and make comprehension more difficult.
It's true. English is spoken in so many different ways around the world.
It's like listening to a symphony orchestra, where each instrument contributes its own unique sound to create a harmonious whole. But if you're not familiar with the different instruments and their roles, it can sound like a cacophony of noise.
That's a great way to put it. So how can we train our ears to better understand different accents and dialects?
Well, I imagine exposure is key. The more we listen to a variety of accents, the more attuned our ears will become to the nuances of pronunciation and intonation.
Absolutely. And thankfully, there are countless resources available for this, from movies and TV shows to podcasts and audiobooks.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. It really helps our channel grow and reach more English learners like you. By subscribing, you'll never miss a new episode, and by liking the video, you're letting us know you want more helpful content. Thank you for your support. It means so much to us.